On July 6, 2024, the new president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, gave his first speech after securing the position in an extraordinary election. The tragic plane crash that claimed the life of former President Ebrahim Raisi hastened the election initially scheduled for 2025. Masoud Pezeshkian has promised to lead Iran out of the crises it is currently facing. But can these promises become reality? Because within this country, the role of the president is not the highest authority. So, who is really behind the Iranian government? Today, let's join the World Explainer to explore this Middle Eastern nation and uncover the answer. Before becoming the Iran we know today, this Middle Eastern country was a monarchy. Its leaders were the Pahlavi dynasty, starting from 1929. Although it was a monarchy, Prince Reza Pahlavi was a Western-oriented leader who tried to secularize and westernize Iran. Under the rule of the Pahlavi dynasty, efforts were made to reduce the power of the Shia clergy, end Islamic laws, and expand women's rights. He banned traditional Iranian clothing for both men and women and encouraged Western dress. Women who resisted removing their veils were forced to do so. He implemented many policies to promote gender equality. Iranian women were allowed to attend law and medical schools for the first time. In 1934, a law imposed heavy fines on cinemas, restaurants, and hotels that did not serve female customers. Reza Pahlavi tried to secularize Iran by bypassing the heavily religious constitution typical of Middle Eastern countries. At that time, Iran was a relatively free country. However, the actions of the Pahlavi dynasty, especially King Reza, displeased the Shia clergy, who had significant influence among the populace. This discontent sparked a flame of anger that would later erupt. Things did not change much under his son, Mohammad Reza. This monarch continued to pursue a secular, pro-Western path. He continued and expanded his father's policies to make Iran the freest Middle Eastern country possible. However, this modernization and westernization process was criticized by the Muslim clergy, who believed it went against Islamic teachings. Moreover, Mohammad Reza's government was criticized for extravagant and wasteful spending. Millions of dollars were spent on weapons projects and hiring foreign personnel, which the people did not desire. He was also questioned for hosting unnecessary grand events. The situation reached its peak during the celebration of the 2500th anniversary of the Persian Empire in October 1971. The three-day event was remembered as the most lavish party in history. 600 guests, including kings, presidents, prime ministers from the Soviet Union to the United States, the non-aligned movement, and royal families from Asia, Europe, and Africa attended. A cardinal representing the Vatican was also present. They enjoyed gourmet dishes prepared by 200 chefs from Paris. Meanwhile, in Fars province, where the event was held, a severe drought was taking a toll. While foreigners feasted on forbidden foods, Iranians were not only barred from the festivities, but some even starved due to the drought. The disconnect between Mohammad Reza's government and his country had grown too vast.
At this point, a figure you might have heard of emerged, Ruhollah Khomeini. He was elected by the Iranian clergy as their leader in 1953. Khomeini vehemently opposed the king's actions of confiscating property owned by some Shia clerics, granting women the right to vote, allowing minority religions to be elected to government, and changing civil laws to give women equal rights in marriage. Khomeini declared that the king was destroying Islam in Iran.
With Shia Muslims comprising the majority of Iran's population, Khomeini quickly garnered significant support for his anti-government stance. Recognizing his growing influence, Mohammad Reza's government arrested the Islamic leader and exiled him abroad. Khomeini spent 14 years in exile in Iraq and later in Paris, where he became the focus of Western media attention. Though in exile, Khomeini maintained a massive influence in Iran, arguably even greater than before. The Shia in the country felt betrayed by the government's harsh treatment of their leader, which turned revolutionary fervor into a massive uprising by 1978.
The first major march against the king was led by Islamic groups in January 1978. Students and religious leaders in the city of Qom, enraged by state-run newspapers smearing Khomeini, marched in protest. The military was sent to disperse the demonstrators, killing several students in the process. The king attempted to appease the dissenters by reducing inflation, seeking the leniency of moderate clerics, and promising a free election in June. However, the spending cuts to combat inflation led to widespread strikes, particularly among the younger workforce. By the summer of 1978, these workers, many of whom came from traditional farming backgrounds, joined the street protests in large numbers.
Facing the revolution, the king sought help from the United States. Despite verbally supporting Mohammad Reza, the Carter administration pursued a vague policy towards Iran. Ultimately, the king's hopes were dashed as Khomeini and his followers swept through the country, seizing power on February 12, 1979. On January 16, 1979, Shah and the royal family left Iran in humiliation, while Khomeini returned just half a month later to the overwhelming joy of the Shia populace. Not only was he the undeniable leader of the revolution, but he also became a semi-divine figure, greeted with chants like, "Khomeini, we salute you, blessings upon you, Islam, Islam, Khomeini, we will follow you," and even Khomeini for king. Following the fall of the Pahlavi dynasty was the secular interim government on February 11, 1979. From this point, Ayatollah Khomeini, or Grand Ayatollah Khomeini, became the most powerful person in Iran. In the same year, he and the interim government passed the Basic Law. According to this law, Ayatollah Khomeini was designated as the supreme leader of the country. The supreme leader of Iran is responsible for outlining and supervising the general policies of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The supreme leader is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, controls military intelligence and security operations, and has the exclusive power to declare war. Judicial leaders, the National Broadcasting Network, police commanders, and military forces, along with 6 of the 12 members of the Guardian Council, are appointed by the supreme leader. The Constitution designates the president as the highest-ranking official in the country after the supreme leader. The president is elected by popular vote for a 4-year term. Presidential candidates must be approved by the Guardian Council before running for office. The president is responsible for implementing the Constitution and exercising executive powers, except for matters directly related to the supreme leader. Unlike other countries, the executive branch in Iran does not manage the armed forces. Although the president appoints the ministers of intelligence and defense, the president typically consults with the supreme leader before making these appointments subject to legislative approval. Iran's legislative branch is unicameral, consisting of the Islamic Consultative Assembly with 290 members elected for 4-year terms. The Majlis is responsible for enacting laws, approving international treaties, and passing the national budget. All candidates and members of the Majlis must be approved by the Guardian Council. The supreme leader appoints the head of the judiciary, who in turn appoints the leaders of the Supreme Courts and the chief prosecutors. Iran has various types of courts, including public courts for civil and criminal cases, and revolutionary courts for specific offenses, such as crimes against national security. The decisions of the revolutionary courts are final and cannot be appealed. From this, we can see that nearly all the power in Iran has been centralized under Ayatollah Khomeini. Although the law states that the supreme leader is overseen by the Assembly of Experts, which also has the power to appoint and dismiss the supreme leader based on evaluations and public respect, Khomeini has maintained his position for almost 5 decades. The true extent of this respect is perhaps only known to the Iranian people. True to his declarations when opposing the Pahlavi dynasty, Ayatollah Khomeini transformed Iran into a strict Islamic state, with numerous rigid religious doctrines. From being one of the most progressive Islamic nations regarding women's rights, Iran has now perhaps fallen to the bottom of this list. The regime in Iran is considered undemocratic by the West, frequently oppressing and arresting government critics and strictly limiting the participation of candidates in elections. Women's rights in Iran are described as poor by Western standards. Child rights have also been violated, with more juvenile offenders executed in Iran than in any other country in the world. Homosexual activity is illegal and punishable by death.
Therefore, it can be seen that the new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, is likely no different from many other presidents in this country, simply a puppet under the control of the powerful supreme leader, Khamenei. But will things change in the future? Let's allow time to answer that question. What do you think about the position of the supreme leader of Iran? Behind the appearance of protecting the people, what do you believe his true intentions are? Let's discuss this in the comments section below. For now, goodbye and see you again.